anywhere. You have to sit down and
okay. Hello, welcome. My name is Kwabena Darko. Welcome today. I want to share with you, Africa is a different world. Africa is a different world. There are a lot of Africans who have not studied Africa. Africa operates with a whole different structure. A lot of the times, if you go through our street, you see business books coming from America, particularly, and when you talk to a lot of young men and women, even those who are trying to acquire knowledge, these are the books that they read. A lot of our motivational speakers and preachers and teachers give us a lot of examples from the West, from America, particularly from England, and they cite all kind of examples. Now they add India and China to them. But what I have come to note is that if you don't understand how Africa is positioned, how Africa operates, and how Africa is, you will find it very difficult to capture a lot of these principles in ideologies and the examples that we see, and trying to implement them, trying to work them on the continent, because the essence of knowledge is to give you results. The essence of knowledge is to bring clarity. The essence of knowledge is to bring some kind of understanding. It matters what you know, and nothing transforms more than knowledge. And so if you are trying to build a business, especially young Africans, whether we live in the continent or we live outside the continent, we must understand that the environment that we operate in is highly responsible for the success that we get in anything, in any endeavor, whether it's a career, whether it's a business, whether it's a finances, whether even a spiritual life or even a family life. And so if you don't understand it that much, you will try to give a lot of examples, and sometimes they may even pump you so much, and then when you hit the ground and it doesn't work, then you go into confusion and you go into accusation and you try to lambast, and sometimes you want to kill all of us because then it comes to where you start to vilify Africa. So I'm talking about Africa is a whole different world when it comes to business, when it comes to wealth creation, when it comes to what it takes for you to succeed here. You must know the difference because of what happened, because of colonization, because of the hegemony, the people who run the world system of wealth, their misunderstanding of the African and Africans, and their intentional annihilation of the continent and the destruction of the continent. You must know what the information that they have put out, what works for us and what does not work for us. Of course, we live in a different world. There are things that we may share in common. But when it comes to wealth creation, finance, business, you must know what works here and what does not work here. And that's why a lot of the times, even multinationals with huge money, when they come to the continent, a lot of them struggle to survive. Except those who are just trying to take the raw materials and the resources from here. Some of them, a lot of them, when they bring their so-called businesses here, they struggle too much, especially if you go into the retail sector, for instance. A lot of them struggle so much. Why? Because we operate in a whole different regime, in a whole different culture, whole different understanding, whole different financial structure and systems. So if you're a young man, you must know this. You say that I want to start a business, but you have read a lot of books by all the billionaires around the world, not the Africans, the billionaires in America and in all these areas, and you have watched a lot of business shows and business motivations, and you are pumped up, and you go to the ground and nothing seems to work, and you think that somebody is doing you. No, somebody is not doing you. Until you understand how the system works, it will be very difficult for you to become successful. And so I'm saying that when it comes to business, most often the rest of the world, you come up with the idea, especially those that they call startups. You come up with the idea, you try to you hustle, as they say it, you grind. It gets to a point you get venture money, or you get some loan, and the loan is maybe 3%, 4%, cheap money, and you try to work it out. And even if it does not work, there are bankruptcy laws and everything to help you, at least to safeguard you. You go to school, if you don't have parents to pay for you, they can give you a loan to survive. In our country, if you start business, as I know it, If you don't have any political connection, you don't have any mother, any father to support you, the bank is not a place you want to go for money. The interest rate has not been that good overall these years, so you understand. And if you pick the business book understanding of how to start a business and you go, that's one of the reasons why they educated, because the way they understand how a business has to be started, how a business has to be groomed or budded. They think that what is in the book, which was built on not the African context but the West, they transpose the same thing here, and they see that they don't succeed. Not many, majority of us will not succeed in that because it is different, and not many of us will even. So they talk about business plan, and you have to do your financials. And listen, a lot of the people who do all these business plan and financials and all those, even though they may be good, but a lot of them, if they have to get the money themselves and start, and they have nobody to help them, those things don't work out. Because you're selling to a population that does not have access to credit card, for instance, and so they're going to buy with the money that they have. You have to understand that. Even go to our tax regimes, how our tax laws operate. They may be entirely different. If you go to real estate, it's the same. We are into property development. If I have to do any project, we have to work and get our own money and push it in the properties. If I go to bank, for instance, for development money, I'm at a point of committing suicide if anything little happens, because they give you money at a very high interest rate, and I will not blame them for that, because it's something that is way beyond them. There are some detections somewhere, but if I have to go for money and build apartments and they are charging me 25%, it doesn't work. So if the house is going to, if the whole structure is going to cost, let's say 5 million cedis or 10 million cedis, in another country they may tell you that maybe even bring 3% of 10 million, 3% of 10 million. That is so little. So if you're able to raise that, maybe they help you with the money and they give you long term to pay. Here, if I go to the bank, they're asking for something way beyond that. So if I have to succeed in real estate, then I must understand how it works here. And even if after production, after I've built those houses, if I want to sell them, I must understand who has the capacity to buy these things, who has the capacity to buy the house that I'm building. You see, so if you go to other countries, they give them mortgage, they give them money. So long as you have some job somewhere, they can give you long-term loan to buy houses. Here, it's a whole different thing. And so one of the reasons you can see that most real estate companies that are building to sell along the line crash is that they are going for loan to build those houses, high expensive loans, and then when they finish, they are also waiting for people who don't have access to some of these loans to come and buy. Now, can you imagine England or America, where developers don't have bank money and where buyers don't have bank money to buy? Can you imagine that? And so this is the kind of economy, to a large extent. It may not be absolute, it may not be 100%, but the people who have access to some of these things may be very little. So the majority of our people may not have access to, businesses may not have access to build for long term, and those home buyers may not also have money or bank loans to buy for long term. And so you have to understand how our system works. Our system may not necessarily be same thing as the rest of the world, especially the West operates. And so if you do understand that, then you want to start, you want to build wealth, you want to build business, you want to build real estate, because those are the key things that we use to build wealth: businesses and property space. And so if these two operate in a whole different, basically opposite what the rest of the world is aware of, then you must study how it is done here. The unfortunate thing is that most of the information that we are given, whether it's from school, on TV, in books, 90% or more are for the system that is designed on credit. Ours is entirely different, and that's why a lot of people who bring the same structure, the same jacket here, will find it difficult to succeed, will find it difficult to survive, will find it difficult to make a headway. You really have to understand that, unless you have a lot of allowance with the money that you're bringing. And if you're coming with nothing in terms of money, but you come with a structure, then you will find it so difficult to succeed. So my name is Kwabena Darko. I'm talking about Africa is a whole different system. Africa is a whole different structure. Unfortunately, many of our people don't even understand it. Many of our people, they live on the continent, especially if you go to school, even though you have never traveled outside the continent, much of what you know is a shadow of how the West operates, because of the institutions that they left. If you look at our legal structure, it's basically a copy of the English kind of system, of the European kind of system, of the African kind of system. If you look at the so-called financial sector that we operate, the so-called former financial sector that we operate is just trying to mimic that. Much of the economy does not support that. So you have to know that the Africa, maybe 90% of our economy, so-called economy, is not the one in the books. It's the one that my grandfather knew. It's the one that my mother knew. It's the one that my sisters who didn't go to school operating. So if you want to understand much of our economy, you look at the people who are selling the spare parts at Abosokai or Swami Magazine. You look at those who are selling at Doom Market, Techima Market, Tamale Market. You go to those who are trading in Ho. You go to Accra, Kantamanto. That's where the economy is. Or you go to the cocoa farms. You go to the people who are. If you really want to understand our transport system, look at the trotro. That's the transport system that we have. Don't look at the Land Cruisers and the Jeep and those. What is the percentage? Because if I go to the lab, for instance, if I'm getting 2%, that is not results. I'm looking at the 90%, the 98%, and bulk of our people look at where they operate, how they think, where the money moves, and that is where you have to understand the system, because that is really what is responsible for the results that we have. So the bulk of our people, how they think, how they make decisions with money, where they purchase, the things that they want to purchase, that is where we are. They are purchasing power, their strength, where the money is. So when somebody comes to Ghana, for instance, and he wants to say that, the salary levels of the Ghanaians, is 600 cedis a month, is 1,000 cedis a month, is 5,000 cedis a month, and then that person converts it into dollars. So for instance, now that the cedi is a bit weak, the other day it was 6.5, then the next day is 7. Somebody is trying to just devalue the value of your business because of the dollar and the cedi disagreement or the relationship that they have, which is weakened. Now, if I had a house which was costing 100,000 Ghana cedis just 2 days because the dollar shifted, now you're saying that the value of my house in terms of dollar has degraded. No, that's not really true. That's not the case. The case is that I believe that it does not matter the currency or the sign of the currency before the money. I think that if I pay 100 cedis in Ghana, it's just as $100 in somewhere. If my business is worth 100 million cedis, it's just as $100 million in another place that they use the dollar. Somebody will say that the dollar is a global economy. We told you they print the dollar, move it everywhere, but we don't buy. How much is the rent here, for instance? We had 2-bedroom houses that we were renting. Look at it. If you convert it into dollar, how much is it that we have? But the same house, if you have to rent it in another country, for instance, it will be maybe 10 times what we are charging here. And so you don't have to use that to say that if I convert the salary into dollar, people are not being paid so well. The economy. If you really want to commit, if you really want to know who has money, go to the traders, go to the farmers, go to the people who are selling, because that is the kind of economy that we have. And then you compare your salary with them, but don't convert. Just see the same bulk and say that this is how much they're making. So if they are making 100,000 cedis a month, don't say that, let me convert it to dollar. Don't convert it to dollar. Just say that it's the same as $100,000 in America. Why? Because of the factors that support how these monies are manufactured in some of these Western countries. So for instance, if my business, if I were to operate in some countries, we could easily take it to the stock market, do some IPOs, they do some valuation. The next minute our business is $1 billion. Your business is $2 billion. So figures, how can you lose $3 billion in a day because of stock market fluctuations? So there are mechanisms that the West is using to create wealth, elusive wealth, that the Africans may not necessarily have access to. So you must understand that, so that you judge us differently, because these are subjects that you have to dig into A lot of our people are not studying, and so they start to compare themselves and combat themselves and feel weak and feel like they are worth nothing and they have nothing. Study the systems well. Africa operates in a whole different system. It may not necessarily be the same as the rest of the so-called world, So for instance, if somebody has a job in Ghana, the way we treat the job, the relationship on the job is not as the rest of the world. If the time that I travel somewhere, the way they treated the workers, the way they handle them is more or less like bondage. You just have to do it because you have no other thing to do. If you don't do it, you can pay your mortgage, you can pay your rent, you can pay your school fees, you can pay Here, if the person does not, if he lives in Accra and he can pay it, he can easily stop the work and go to his hometown. There could possibly be Abusuanfie there, the family house, and they may not necessarily have to pay rent for that. They could easily go to the farm and eat. It's a whole different structure. I see that our problem is being able to use our structure to create wealth. And the more that you use other models to define us, the less capable you are to create wealth out of that. So one of your biggest advantage as an African is sitting down to study how our system, how our world operates, and how you can use that for your benefit without necessarily comparing yourself all the time to the so-called developed world. Because much of it, if you study it well, the wealth of this world is calabout, it's race-based, and a lot of our people don't know that. The first time I was in England, I saw it. It's like, wow, a lot of Africans, the people who look like me, I didn't see them in huge positions, one or two maybe, but majority of them were in the menial jobs, even those who had education. And I said, no, this is not right. I would want to see them being billionaires and millionaires, controlling, not just one or two. I want to see a lot of us in that kind of structure. Then it's a good structure for me. So the moment I saw that, I said, no, it doesn't worth it. No matter how personally I push, the fact that I am personally successful does not mean that I'm successful, unless I see a lot of people who look like me, who are as successful as I am. So my name is Obeng Darko. I'm talking about Africa is a whole different system. And young men and women, especially young men in Ghana who have completed school, study this. Because the education that they gave you at Kwame Nkrumah University or at Legon or at any other university in Ghana, that information is conditioning you to think like a Westerner. But then when you hit the ground, it is not like that. It is a whole different structure that you must understand. So when you are in school, study that. Because you come out to say that I went to university, but when I completed, I had no job. You had no job because you might understand how the so-called formal jobs are created. The formal jobs are created out of industry. And so you go around to see how many industries that we are creating every year, and how many people can each of those industries take. You understand that? You look at the number of graduates that we are producing and the number of jobs that we are producing every year, and the systems and structures that even support a lot of these businesses that we create, and would they even survive? But there are jobs. The only thing is that the jobs are in what you call informal sector that your school did not teach you. And that's where the wealth is, and that's where the power is, and that's where the opportunities are. But because they sent you through a school that was designed to denigrate and to look down upon these settings, you will never be able to see the opportunities. And so your classmate who just finished JSS and never continued will end up becoming more successful in terms of finance than you. And that's why a lot of our graduates, a lot of educated people would have to wait for government to give them jobs. And so if the government does not have job for them, now they say that they have no job. If the multinationals do not have any job for them, then they say that they have no job. But there are so many opportunities if we could give them different kind of education. But with awareness, you have to put down somewhere the so-called certificate that you have and go and study the system. You see that you have so many opportunities that you could ever handle. And that's the kind of framework that we develop. After school we said that, okay, where are the opportunities? Let's look at it. Let's go to the ground. Let's go and trade. Let's go and farm. Let's go and fight just like anybody else. Advantage that we may have is that we are able to, structure and read and get documents and track and build patterns. And even have capacity to manage more than the other person who may not be able to read or write, So that's the advantage that the school gives you. So study that. study that. So my name is Kwabena Darko. I want to say thank you very much for taking your time to watch this. Africa is a whole different world, and you must understand it. Those of you who have traveled and who are trying to transpose, transpose. When you play a keyboard, you can move from one key to the next. The transposition. You move that. You move the same jacket here, and you think that it will work. It will not work because it's a whole different structure. It's a whole different system. It's a whole different environment, and you must understand how this environment operates so that you are not frustrated, so that you don't give up. Understanding, being able to bring understanding, illumination is halfway through the solution or through the problem. Being able to have good understanding of how things are will save you a lot from frustration and even from failure. And that makes you more persistent and consistent, because now you have clarity as to the stages and the processes and how things behave the way they behave, and how people behave the way they behave, how people think the way they think. And once we are equipped with that, then you'll be able to go for the long haul, the miles that you are supposed to cover before you start to see success. You'll be able to understand that, because now you are equipped, you are tooled, you have understanding, you have knowledge, you have some kind of wisdom to deal with the situation as it is. But if you're fizzy, if you are living in somewhere, you are in a dream, you would think that it's the same. It's not the same. Africa's system is so different in everything, in trade, in immigration, in education, in everything. Africa, even in culture, the way we talk, the way even family setting. Look at our family, look at our funeral, look at how our chiefs are, look at even how our government, the so-called government structure, look at how it operates, look at how our people think. It's a different thing. So if you see that and you can build from that, it's better than trying to bring a whole jacket and put it on the people, because then you will fail. It causes frustration. I heard a story that some people wanted to build some toilet facility for some village, and they went there. They just went there and set some duplexes somewhere, and beautiful, painted, and the people never use it. Why? Because they did not consult the people who were going to use it. They did not understand. So the understanding of the people was that, why should I do this? And you have to see it, because that's not the system that they know. And you will say that, it's because you have to give them, you have to train them. No, you don't have to train them. You just have to ask. When the seed has to grow into a tree, you don't bring another seed. The strength and the power is in that seed, So you just have to evolve. The best of strategies, the best of systems are built with the culture in mind, with the originality in mind. It's not an imposition. So you have to understand how our businesses are built, how they are built to be successful. You have to understand the tools for wealth creation. You have to understand how even our real estate market, how it is built. Forget about all those so-called investors building all these huge houses. That's not where the demand is. That's not. So they are just beautifying the place. But in terms of economics, in terms of money, a lot of them may not be making as they thought they would. Because one thing that they are trying not to understand is that in the countries that they are, it's the banks that are giving the people money to buy. So if the banks are not giving money to the people to buy, then what makes you think that you had money to buy? You who did it? Where you're coming from? People don't have money to buy houses. And here, you say they are poor, but they must have money to come and buy those houses. No. So you must understand where the people are, understand their capacity, understand where the rare wealth is. That is we have to understand the psyche of our people. So I want to say thank you very much for taking your time to watch this. Thank you very much.